When Greg stumbles upon evidence of his wife Lisa's affair, his world shatters. Determined to confront the betrayal, he meticulously gathers proof, all while maintaining a facade of normalcy for their children. As secrets unravel, Greg takes control, ensuring Lisa faces the consequences of her actions. But just as he begins to rebuild his life, a tragic accident ends Lisa's life unexpectedly, leaving Greg to navigate the complexities of grief, betrayal, and forgiveness. In this gripping tale of heartbreak and resilience, Greg must confront the ultimate question: can love and loss coexist when trust is irreparably broken? I met Lisa during my second year of college. She was magnetic, the kind of woman who could light up a room with just her presence. I was drawn to her instantly, and to my surprise, she felt the same way. We got married 2 years after graduation, and the years that followed felt like a dream. 15 years later, that dream had become a routine, albeit a comfortable one. We had 2 wonderful kids, our daughter Emily, 13, and Jake, 9, and a home that was everything Lisa had ever wanted. My career as a software engineer had taken off, allowing us a lifestyle that wasn't extravagant but certainly didn't lack anything. Lisa worked as a nurse, and I always admired her dedication to her job and her patience. It wasn't perfect, what marriage is, but I believed we were solid. Every so often, we'd fight about something trivial: her habit of leaving wet towels on the bathroom floor, my tendency to get lost in work even on weekends. But those were small things, the kind you brush off because they don't matter in the grand scheme of things. The first crack appeared on a Friday evening. Lisa was heading out for what she called a girls' night out. She emerged from our bedroom wearing a sleek red dress I hadn't seen in years. It clung to her in all the right ways, and for a moment, I was reminded of the woman I had fallen in love with. But something about the way she avoided meeting my eyes made my stomach twist. "Don't wait up," she said lightly, grabbing her purse. "Where are you all going?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Just dinner and drinks." "Maybe some dancing," she replied, her smile a little too quick. I kissed her on the cheek and watched her leave. Something about the way she hurried out the door, as if she couldn't wait to be anywhere but here, nagged at me. I tried to shake it off. She deserved a night out, God knew she worked hard enough. But still, the unease lingered. She came home late, much later than usual. I was already in bed, pretending to be asleep when I heard her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. The scent of her perfume filled the room, but there was something else, a faint trace of cologne that wasn't mine. I told myself I was imagining it, but the knot in my stomach tightened. The following weeks didn't do much to ease my mind. Lisa started working more late shifts, claiming the hospital was short-staffed. She became more attentive to her appearance, spending hours at the gym and buying clothes she hadn't worn since our early years of marriage. I wanted to believe it was just a phase, but my instincts told me otherwise. Then came the night I couldn't ignore. Lisa's phone was on the counter while she helped Jake with his homework. I glanced at it without meaning to, and a message popped up on the screen: "Can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again?" The sender's name was Jeff W. My blood ran cold. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Lisa. My Lisa. The woman I had built my life with. I wanted to grab the phone, march into the living room, and demand answers, but something held me back. Instead, I stepped outside to clear my head. I stood on the porch, the cool night air doing little to calm the storm inside me. Every memory of our life together played on a loop in my mind, now tainted by that single message. I had no proof of what it meant, no context, no explanation, but my gut told me everything I needed to know. When I came back inside, Lisa was tucking Jake into bed. She smiled at me as she walked past, and it took everything in me to smile back. I needed more than a single message. I needed to know the truth. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention. I watched her every move, her every excuse, looking for cracks in her stories. It didn't take long to find them. A shift swap that didn't make sense. A receipt for dinner at a restaurant I'd never been to. The way she clutched her phone as if it were a lifeline. Each discovery chipped away at the image I had of the woman I thought I knew. One night, while she was asleep, I took her phone. My hands shook as I scrolled through her messages. There were dozens of them, all from Jeff. They weren't graphic, but they didn't need to be. The intimacy was clear. They shared inside jokes, talked about things I knew nothing about, and referenced times they had spent together. My stomach churned as I read the words that confirmed my worst fears. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. My mind raced with questions, accusations, and the overwhelming need for answers. By morning, I knew what I had to do. This wasn't just about Lisa anymore. This was about me, about our kids, about the life I had worked so hard to build. I couldn't let her destroy it. Not without a fight. And so, I started to plan. The days following my discovery were a blur of anger, sadness, and confusion. Every time I looked at Lisa, I felt a tidal wave of emotions crashing over me. How could she betray me like this? How could she smile and kiss me goodnight while carrying on with someone else? But I couldn't let my feelings show, not yet. If I wanted the truth, I had to play it smart. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal. I kept my voice steady, my expressions neutral. I helped the kids with their homework, laughed at Lisa's jokes, and kissed her goodbye as she left for work, or wherever she was really going. Inside, I was dying. But I knew I needed more than suspicion and text messages. I needed proof. That's when I decided to dig deeper. Lisa had always been cautious with her phone, but she wasn't as careful with other things. Her car, for instance. She often left it unlocked in the driveway, and one morning, while she was in the shower, I slipped outside to take a look. My heart pounded as I opened the glove compartment and found exactly what I was looking for. A hotel receipt. It wasn't just any receipt, it was for a boutique hotel downtown, dated 2 days prior, the night she had supposedly worked late. Her name was printed clearly at the top, along with the room number and check-in time. My hands trembled as I held the slip of paper, the reality of her betrayal sinking in even deeper. But that wasn't all. Underneath the receipt was something that made my stomach turn, a small, black box. I opened it to find a set of earrings I'd never seen before. Elegant, expensive-looking, and completely unfamiliar. She hadn't bought them for herself, of that, I was certain. They were a gift, likely from him. My mind raced with questions. Had she worn them on one of their dates? Did he put them on her himself? I slammed the glove compartment shut and walked back inside, clutching the receipt like it was a piece of evidence in a courtroom. My resolve hardened. This wasn't just a hunch anymore. Lisa was cheating, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. That night, I made a call to an old friend of mine, Paul. Paul worked in private security, and if anyone could help me get the proof I needed, it was him. I didn't go into too much detail, just enough to let him know what I was dealing with. He agreed to meet me the next day at a coffee shop on the edge of town. Paul was exactly the kind of guy you wanted on your side in a situation like this, discreet, resourceful, and ruthless when necessary. He listened as I explained the situation, nodding thoughtfully as I laid out what I knew so far. "You're doing the right thing," he said finally. "But you need to be careful. If she catches on to what you're doing, she could twist this around and make you look like the bad guy." "I'm not worried about that," I said, though in truth, the thought had crossed my mind. "I just want the truth." Paul leaned back in his chair. "Then we'll get it. I can set up a tracker on her car and get you some surveillance equipment for the house. If she's sneaking around, we'll know exactly where she's going and who she's meeting." It was a bitter pill to swallow, realizing how far I had to go to uncover the truth about the woman I loved. But I had no choice. Lisa had shattered my trust, and I needed to know the full extent of her betrayal before deciding what to do next. The tracker was easy enough to install. Paul showed me how to place it discreetly under the car, and within minutes, her every move was being logged. The surveillance equipment was trickier. I didn't want the kids to stumble upon hidden cameras or recording devices, so we kept it simple, a camera in the living room and another in the kitchen. These were the places where Lisa spent the most time on her phone. Over the next week, I monitored everything. The tracker showed her making frequent stops at places she shouldn't have been, restaurants we'd never gone to, hotels I'd only seen in advertisements. The footage from the cameras revealed hours of hushed phone conversations, her face lighting up in ways I hadn't seen in years. She wasn't just cheating, she was invested in this affair. The final straw came one afternoon when I logged into the tracker and saw that her car was parked outside a fancy restaurant downtown. It wasn't a hospital cafeteria or a work meeting. It was a romantic spot we used to go to before life got busy. My chest tightened as I stared at the screen, knowing what I had to do. I left work early that day, telling my boss I had a family emergency. My hands were clammy as I drove to the restaurant, the reality of what I might find weighing heavy on my mind. I parked a block away and walked to the entrance, my heart pounding with each step. Inside, it didn't take long to find her. She was seated at a corner table, laughing and leaning in close to a man I instantly recognized as Jeff. He was everything I wasn't, slick, polished, the kind of guy who looked like he spent more time on his hair than on actual work. Seeing them together was like a punch to the gut. I didn't confront them, not yet. Instead, I snapped a photo from the doorway and walked out before either of them could see me. My head spun as I got back into my car, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. It was real. There was no denying it now. Lisa was cheating on me, and I had the proof. The next step was deciding what to do with it. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange sense of calm. The truth was out there, and soon, Lisa would have to face it. And when she did, I would be ready. The picture I took at the restaurant stayed on my phone, an indelible reminder of what Lisa had done. I looked at it every night before bed, fueling the quiet storm of resolve brewing inside me. I didn't want an emotional confrontation, those were too easy to manipulate, too easy for Lisa to twist into something else. I needed to be methodical. Precise. Ruthless. The following weekend, Lisa announced she had another shift swap at the hospital. I nodded, keeping my face neutral, and wished her a good night. Once she was gone, I called Paul. "She's lying again," I said, pacing the living room as the kids watched a movie upstairs. "I need you to follow her tonight." Paul didn't hesitate. "You got it. I'll keep you posted." It felt strange, sitting at home, pretending everything was fine while Paul tracked my wife's movements. I kept myself busy with the kids, making popcorn and sitting with them through a Pixar movie I barely registered. My mind was on Lisa. On Jeff. On the life I thought I had and the one I now realized I didn't. Paul called me around 10 p.m. "She's at the Omni Hotel downtown," he said. "Checked in about an hour ago. Alone." Alone. Of course, she would check in alone. Jeff wouldn't risk being seen with her in public for too long. He'd show up later, slipping through the lobby like the snake he was. "Thanks," I said, my voice tight. "Let me know when he gets there." Hours passed. I checked my phone obsessively, waiting for an update from Paul. Finally, just after midnight, my phone buzzed. "He's here," Paul said. "They're in the room together. I've got photos of him going in." My throat tightened. It wasn't a surprise, not after everything I'd seen and heard, but the confirmation still felt like a knife to the heart. "Good," I managed to say. "Send me everything." Paul hesitated. "What's your next move, Greg?" I didn't answer right away. What was my next move? Part of me wanted to burst into that hotel room and confront them both. But what would that accomplish? It would give Lisa and Jeff the chance to lie, to manipulate the situation. No, I needed to stick to my plan. I'm not sure yet, I admitted. But I'll let you know. The next morning, Lisa returned home looking as radiant as ever. She kissed me on the cheek, her smile bright, and asked how my night with the kids had been. I stared at her, marveling at how easily she could pretend everything was normal. Uneventful, I said, forcing a smile. How about you? Busy shift. She nodded, slipping out of her shoes. Exhausting. I'm going to take a quick shower. I watched her go, wondering if she felt any guilt at all. Probably not. People like Lisa didn't feel guilt, not until they were forced to face the consequences of their actions. Over the next week, I built my case. Paul's photos of Jeff at the hotel, the tracker logs, the texts I had saved from Lisa's phone, they all painted a clear picture. Lisa had been cheating, and now, I had the evidence to prove it. But I wasn't just going to use it for a confrontation. I had something bigger in mind. I met with a divorce lawyer named Karen. She came highly recommended by Paul, and within minutes of sitting down with her, I knew why. She was sharp, no nonsense, and had a particular disdain for cheaters. I want this to be as clean as possible, I told her. I don't want to drag the kids into it, but I want Lisa to feel the full weight of her actions. Karen nodded, taking notes as I spoke. With the evidence you've collected, you're in a strong position. We can use this to negotiate a favorable settlement for you, custody, the house, everything. Her words were a balm to my anger. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had some control. I left her office that day with a plan and a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in weeks. The confrontation came a few days later. It was a Thursday evening, and Lisa was cooking dinner while the kids did their homework. I waited until the kids were distracted, then walked into the kitchen and placed a manila envelope on the counter. Inside were the photos, the tracker logs, and copies of the texts. Lisa glanced at the envelope, then back at me. What's this? Open it, I said, my voice calm. She hesitated, then wiped her hands on a dish towel and opened the envelope. I watched her face as she pulled out the photos, her eyes widening with each one. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Care to explain? I asked, folding my arms. She looked up at me, her face pale. Greg, Don't bother lying, I interrupted. I've been tracking you for weeks. I know about Jeff. I know about the hotels. I know everything. Tears filled her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. Greg, I'm so sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean for this to happen. Didn't mean for it to happen. I repeated, my voice rising. You've been sneaking around for months, maybe longer. You've been lying to me, to our kids, to everyone. Don't stand there and act like this was some accident. Lisa crumpled onto a chair, sobbing. It didn't mean anything, she said. It was just a mistake. I shook my head, disgusted. A mistake is spilling coffee on the carpet. What you did was deliberate. Repeated. Calculated. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. Please, Greg, she begged. Don't do this. Don't throw away everything we've built. I'm not the one who threw it away, I said. You did that the moment you decided to cheat. I've already spoken to a lawyer. You'll be hearing from her soon. Her face crumpled as the weight of my words sank in. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her to deal with the mess she had created. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. Lisa moved out 2 weeks later. The kids didn't understand why, and I tried my best to explain it in terms they could grasp. Mom and Dad need some time apart, I said, my voice steady but my heart breaking. It doesn't mean we love you any less. Emily took it the hardest. She was old enough to sense the tension, though I spared her the details. Jake, thankfully, seemed too young to fully grasp what was happening. He still asked when Mom would be back, his innocent hope cutting me deeper than anything Lisa had done. The divorce proceedings were quick and clinical. Karen had done her job well. I got primary custody of the kids and kept the house. Lisa, burdened by guilt and a lack of options, agreed to everything without a fight. I told myself I should feel victorious, but all I felt was empty. In the weeks that followed, life became a delicate balancing act. Between work, parenting, and trying to rebuild a sense of normalcy, I had little time to think about Lisa or the devastation she'd caused. But late at night, when the house was quiet and the kids were asleep, the memories would creep in. Her laugh, her touch, the way she used to hum while cooking, ghosts of a life I'd lost forever. I wasn't prepared for what came next. It was a gray October morning when I got the call. I was in the middle of a meeting when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Something told me to answer. The voice on the other end was calm but grim. Mr. Greg Thompson. Yes, I said, a knot forming in my stomach. This is Officer Harris with the city police. I'm sorry to inform you that your ex-wife, Lisa Thompson, was involved in a car accident earlier this morning. The words hit me like a freight train. What happened? I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. She lost control of her vehicle on Highway 10, Harris explained. It appears she swerved to avoid a deer and went off the road. She was pronounced dead at the scene. I felt the air leave my lungs. Dead? I echoed, as if saying it out loud would make it real. Yes, sir, Harris said gently. I'm very sorry for your loss. I hung up, my hands trembling, and stared at my phone. The office around me blurred as the weight of the news settled in. Lisa was gone. The woman who had betrayed me, the mother of my children, the person I had spent nearly half my life with, gone in an instant. I left the office without a word, my mind spinning. By the time I got home, the tears had started. I collapsed on the couch, my chest heaving with sobs. I didn't know what I was crying for, the life we'd lost, the love we once shared, or the fact that despite everything, I had never wanted this. The hardest part was telling the kids. Emily broke down in tears, clinging to me as if I were the only thing keeping her world from falling apart. Jake didn't cry at first. He just sat there, staring at me with wide, confused eyes. "Mommy's really gone?" he asked finally, his voice small. I nodded, unable to speak. He buried his face in my chest, and we sat there together, holding each other as the weight of our loss sank in. The days that followed were a blur of funeral arrangements, condolences from family and friends, and endless questions from the kids. I tried to be strong for them, but inside, I was crumbling. The anger I had carried for so long was gone, replaced by a hollow ache. Lisa had made mistakes, but she hadn't deserved this. At the funeral, I stood by the casket with Emily and Jake, each of us clutching a single white rose. Lisa looked peaceful, almost like the woman I had fallen in love with all those years ago. I wondered if she'd been at peace in her final moments or if she'd been haunted by regret. After the service, I found myself alone at the gravesite. The others had left, but I couldn't bring myself to go. I stood there, staring at the fresh mound of earth, and whispered the words I hadn't been able to say while she was alive. "I forgive you." The wind carried my words away, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a strange sense of release. It didn't erase the pain or the betrayal, but it was a start. Lisa was gone, but a part of her would always live on, in Emily's sharp wit, in Jake's boundless energy, in the memories we had built together. Life went on, as it always does. The house felt emptier, the nights quieter, but I held on to the hope that time would heal the wounds. For Emily and Jake, I had to believe that brighter days were ahead. But some nights, when the world was still, I would sit by the window, staring at the stars, and wonder what could have been. In the end, all I had were the memories, both the good and the bad. And the knowledge that sometimes, even the deepest wounds leave scars you carry forever.